Trump is in full pay no attention to the man behind the curtain mode. How should we handle these distraction tactics? How should you, in your conversations with friends, handle it? We'll get into that. Just when it seems like Trump might be able to grasp the threat of Russia, his Putin addiction relapses. Have Dems remotely addressed the challenges that we failed to overcome in our party in 2024? It's time for a check-in on that. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54.
All right, Jason, let's start with some breaking news. It seems like J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, and Stephen Miller visited Union Station, which is a wonderful train station in Washington, D.C., to discuss the National Guard and military and federal presence in D.C. Let's go to this video.
President, why are troops stationed here at Union Station on the National Mall instead of areas in D.C. where crime is statistically highest?
Well, if you've ever been to Union Station in the last few years with your family, you know that crime is actually extremely high right here at Union Station. You have vagrants, you have drug addicts, you have...
So, vagrants.
Crap.
Yeah, it's...
Vagrants, see? We're in a movie from the 30s. I mean...
Yeah, forgetting the use of the strange use of that term, I think it really is worth underlining that their rationale now is, I don't know what the technical definition of vagrants are, but when I think of vagrants, I think of homeless people. Like, is that what we're using our military for now?
Okay, I have so much to say about this. And I'm going to try and focus it on the mission of the show, which is what people listening should say about this. Let me start with my own experience, which is I went to Georgetown Law School, which is down the street from Union Station in DC. And at that time, the area where the law school was and where Union Station is, I don't know if it was a high crime area, but it was nowhere near as gentrified, as invested in as it is now. It looks completely different around that area than it did when I graduated law school 20 years ago. I can't believe that's a number. But I can, I go to DC. Look, that's not what it's like. Okay. Here's what I would say about this. There are many ways in which this is objectionable. There is, if I was talking to somebody about it, I would say, okay, imagine you were a member of the West Virginia National Guard. Or the Maryland Guard. I guess Maryland hasn't been pulled in, but I think it's Republican governors who are sending their folks. I know that they asked the governor of Missouri to consider it, and I don't think he has so far. But imagine, you are stuck in DC, walking around at Union Station, guarding Sephora in Chinatown or whatever. Why? Because your governor's a Republican. That's why. That's why you're not at your job. That's why you're not with your family. That's why you're not doing those things. And you would be really pissed off. That's number one. Number two, the fact that they don't put any of the DEA folks, the FBI folks that are patrolling. There was this video the other day of them tending to a drunk girl, like 7 federal law enforcement officers, just like trying to get a drunk girl home. No noble thing to do. Probably doesn't take 7 people. The fact that they're not actually doing anything about crime and that there's these videos circulating of them with their social media teams walking Reservoir Dogs or Tombstone style down the street is objectionable and a huge waste of resources. But finally, this is what I would say to folks. In American cities, yes, crime is an issue. In America, crime is an issue, largely because of the fact that it's so easy to get a gun in America. But for whatever reason, however you get there, sure, there are arguments to be made for increased law enforcement presence and all sorts of other things that could be done. It makes me mad that Trump only seems to notice it right now in the place where he lives.
He notices in the place where he lives, but he also, when he does notice it elsewhere, there's a strange pattern of only picking blue states.
Yeah, and he only does it when it's to his political advantage, right? And
yeah.
So it's like, okay, if you were to stipulate to all these things, if you were to even stipulate, yes, which I don't believe this, but because of the way Democrats do things, it's very dangerous. And these, if you were to stipulate to that, okay, fine. Why is he only doing it in the place that he can see out his window? Because he doesn't care about you. That's why.
Yeah. You mentioned these videos that are circulating of these members of the military and law enforcement seem like fairly senior people being followed with people like their own members of their team with cameras just walking around. It's just embarrassing, I think, for everybody involved, just how unserious these people are. And it comes from the top. You think about who's running Homeland Security right now, who's running the FBI, and who is running the Pentagon. They're social media stars.
The cosplay administration is what this is, right? That you sent me right before we went on the air, and we decided we didn't need to talk about it as like a separate segment, but you sent me the article about Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey being appointed co-deputy director, which is a funny title of the it's like a let's give this kid playing time, co-deputy director of the FBI. And I have in my text thread with some other, Missouri political folks the other day, what I said about this is I was like, look, I don't know Andrew Bailey. Like, he was appointed to this office after I came in. I don't know the dude. Like, so I don't have other than he said a bunch of stuff in the paper I disagree with. But what I do know is that you can now start the countdown clock until Andrew Bailey, who has, other than being the attorney general for a few years in Missouri, has no law enforcement experience. Like, he has legal experience as the attorney general of Missouri. If that counts as law enforcement, I guess it does. But like, you can start the clock now to how many days it'll be before his profile picture on all of his social media is himself in body armor that says FBI across the front, because that's what this administration is. It's just cosplay. It's just theater. It's just acting. And like, I promise you that this, I don't know the guy. Maybe I'm wrong, but if he's like any of the others, he's like, I cannot wait to get my badge and my gun. I don't think he's going to Quantico. I don't think he's going to become a real FBI agent, but he's going to play one on television.
Well, in other news, the administration seems hell-bent on relitigating the issue of slavery. Trump,
which is a totally normal thing to do.
Yeah. Trump posted on Truth Social, the Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discusses how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was. We're not going to allow this to happen. And he talked about how they're going to go through and make changes at the museums. You would think this is a one-off moment, and one could say, hey, this might have just been, an errant line in his tweet, but there have been plenty of signs from both Trump and his administration and across the magosphere that this is an organized effort now to talk both about the issue of slavery, but also monuments, bringing back Confederate monuments, for example, and also dispatching their public intellectuals, if we want to be charitable, onto the morning shows and cable news and podcasts, talk about how slavery really wasn't that bad. This is now a line, Jason, that we're hearing from the Trump side of our politics.
How desperate do you have to be to change the subject that you're like, let's make the case that slavery was okay? Because like, we've been through the routine of them trying to change the subject many, many times, right? And usually when they're doing it on a ground that's not particularly good for us to fight on, right? It's trans athletes, it's, whatever, it's PC language, it's, stuff where when we talk about it, we have a tendency to lose independent voters because we look out of touch, right? Doesn't mean we should change our opinion on it. It just means like they know that they tend to have us in terms of the political debate right now on these certain issues. This is not one of them. Like, that's how desperate he is to change the subject away from Epstein. Is like, I'm sorry, I don't think a lot of independent voters are like, finally somebody is talking about how slavery wasn't really that big of a deal. Like, I don't think that's what's happening, but that's what they got to do to get attention now.
Yeah, Ron Filipowski tweeted, there's probably no connection between Trump's post suggesting slavery wasn't that bad, his restoration of monuments honoring Confederates, and renaming military bases to honor traitors who believe that it was simply a property right being taken from them without just cause. So obviously he's being sarcastic. I think the obvious thing that people like enters people's minds when something like this happens is like, Trump is trying to distract. So how do you handle something like this when, on the one hand, you don't want to allow him to succeed in distracting from things that he wants to distract from, but then where what he's trying to do is an important part of American history that he's trying to revise in the minds of the public. And you really don't want to let him get away with that revisionist history either.
So here's the way I handle this now, and this is sort of a new development, is that I will particularly when they're saying something as dumb as this. I will debate the merits of it, but only in the context of whether it is right or wrong to bring this up as a way to distract from the Epstein list. Like,
Right.
so if it comes up with somebody, I'm going to be like, look, my problem with it, like, can we discuss, like, whatever your opinion on this, can we discuss whether it is okay for a president to have you and I talking about this right now? I would say to a friend, so that we're not talking about the Epstein list. Like, I don't think that's okay. I don't think, for some reason, you may disagree with me on the idea that slavery is our great original sin and what we have been striving to overcome as a people and not getting there yet, but hopefully trying all the time to overcome as a people, that original sin. We could, I guess, somehow disagree over that. But shouldn't we agree over the fact that, like, it's not the most pressing thing facing the country right now? And the reason the president wants us to talk about this is because of the Epstein list, and like, that's not okay. Like, I don't think either of us want this to be the president's top priority. You and I talking about this instead of his great scandal that's going on.
Yeah, there's this, one could argue about how much racism there was behind the scenes that we weren't seeing as much in sort of public life in this kind of way, like from the Oval Office, from major media operations, in past years. Like, one could debate how much there was or there wasn't, et cetera. One thing I think is obvious to me is that people are becoming way more brazen. Like, I was just reading about this whites only community they're trying to build down in Arkansas. These are the kinds of things that there were ways, and I've spent a lot of time in the South. There are a lot of ways in which people, de facto have created such communities. In at least recent modern life, it would be much more rare to find people just wearing their racism badge as proudly as they are now. And I think it has a lot to do with who's president of the United States and what his movement represents.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that the other side to that for Trump is that he doesn't have the same foil that he had. He sort of won that battle. He won the battle of, we should be able to say whatever we want, and it doesn't make it morally right. Like I'm not saying we lost the moral battle, but we in the short term have lost the rhetorical battle, right? Like, you can go on TV and say almost whatever you want now and not get canceled, right? And that makes it less interesting when he does this. And it's why like everything else in the past 10 years since Trump came down the escalator, every time he does something, he's competing against himself, and he has to top himself. And that means he has to get more and more extreme in order to get any attention. And I do believe that is becoming problematic for the Republicans, because, what was the 2017 or 18 version of this? I'm trying to think of, like, baiting us into things. I mean, it was probably so mild by comparison. But what I can promise you is it was not, we have to stop our national institutions from taking the position that slavery was bad. Like, I mean, he's carving into the bone because he's getting so desperate.
Well, let's talk about Ukraine here. There's been a lot that's happened over the past week as it relates to Ukraine, but I'm not sure anything happened. And what I mean by this is,
Right.
like, Putin and Trump had their, I think, like, disgusting summit in Alaska in which nothing was announced. And, we added more and more evidence that no matter what, whether there's any leverage or not, that Putin has over Trump, if Putin did have leverage over Trump, he would be behaving like this, whether or not. So, like, it's weird that we roll out the red carpet for Putin in this country after he invaded Ukraine and after he has made it very clear that he doesn't respect anything about our processes in this country, including our electoral processes that our Senate Intelligence Committee laid out in a multi-volume work back when Marco Rubio was pretending to be more moderate and even-handed. Trump didn't announce anything there. He then invited Zelinsky to the Oval Office along with European leaders. The European leaders, I think, were smart to and this is August in Europe, so a lot of these people probably were pulled from vacation. They were smart to back up Zelinsky there. It was bad optics, I think, from the perspective of all these European leaders just kind of facing Trump like he's the teacher in the class. But what was good optics was that J.D. Vance was on the couch. I'm not even trying to make a joke about him in the couches, but like he was in the couch in the background while the grown-ups were having the conversation. Where we find ourselves now appears to be exactly where we started, which is Putin has never changed his position since the start of this war, has never budged. And there's all this talk about a bilateral meeting. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. I'm like pessimistic that it would happen, but I don't think it will yield anything. Like Putin has made it clear he has no interest in giving a ceasefire or giving any ground on his demands.
Yeah, look, on the plus side, it felt like Trump was starting to realize that Russia was not I can't say that they're the bad guy. He hasn't figured that out. But he has made comments where it seems like Trump has tiptoed into the reality that they're not the good guy, right? And that certainly, at least that Ukraine is not the bad guy. That felt like progress, right? And then we've got this thing where now Trump clearly desperately wants to add to his ego shelf in his brain a Nobel Peace Prize. So he seems genuinely desperate now to end a war. Those seem like good things for us. For those of us who, would like to see a war end, it's good when the president is motivated, and it's good when the president no longer thinks that the bad guys are good guys. The problem is he doesn't think that they're bad guys still, obviously. And so at the end of the day, like, Vladimir Putin is not a guy who's gonna do literally anything ever because it's the right thing to do, and he's not even gonna do that many things because it's the best thing for his country. Vladimir Putin is gonna do things when he's incentivized because he's worried about what happens to him, and that's why ultimately enormous international pressure exerted upon him and led by the United States that ratchets up and up and up and up is probably the only thing that's really gonna get him to move. And the reason I agree with you that we're probably back where we started is I don't think Trump has any appetite for that.
Right. Well, a couple of quick clips here that have come out in the past few days. One is Trump describing his relationship with Putin.
I maintained a very good relationship. I mean, you saw that when he got off his plane, I got off my plane. There's a warmth there that you can't, there's a decent feeling. And it's a good thing, not a bad thing.
I want to finish that sentence. There's a warmth there that you can't. Yeah. There's a lot there. Yeah, we can't. I agree. We can't explain it in normal terms.
Yeah.
Like he's saying it out loud.
There should not be a warmth there. He's not a good person. But
should not be a warmth there, and we can't. Like we can't explain it,
and we can't explain it. Other than you're not a good person.
You gaslight us when we try to explain it, right? Like when you do things, like you have literally, like whether or not there is any leverage there, and I want to say, like I don't have any special knowledge of any leverage. I just know what I know from the very beginning when Trump was calling on Russia to release Hillary's emails, and they did, to now, Russia has gotten everything they've wanted from this relationship with Trump. Everything.
Yeah.
So that was one moment that caught my attention. Another, which is a little bit more lighthearted, is a reporter who I guess is romantically involved with Marjorie Taylor Greene, at least as what I've seen on the internet, asked a question of Zelinsky about his suit. Here's this exchange.
President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice? That's the one that attacked you last time. See, now he's in.
I remember that.
I look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
In the same suit. You see, I changed. You are not.
Maybe yours is much better. Real quickly, upon peace, God.
So, Zelinsky, you could see is doing everything
for the fact that the reporter was wearing the same suit as before.
Zelinsky, I think, put on a suit. He knew
dude has comedic chops. He was a comic.
Well, when your entire country is depending on you to keep them safe, you have to swallow whatever indignity possible And in that case, we've talked about it, like Bukele and all these people. The right wing doesn't seem to point out whenever somebody who they like isn't wearing a suit in the Oval Office. But they gave Zelinsky a hard time about it. And he's just like, all right, I'm going to put on a suit and I'm going to follow the playbook that says tried and true in this league, our politics, which is flatter Trump. And that is how you maximize your hand.
Yeah. I mean, look, Jeremy's saying that this guy, Brian Glenn, is in fact Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend. I don't know. I'll say that's alleged. What I can confirm is he's a douchebag. I mean, because like, what a performative, stupid thing to do. And if I were, and Zelensky, he's just like you said, he's doing whatever he needs to do to play the game. But like, can we talk for a second about why the dude doesn't wear a suit? Like, the dude doesn't wear a suit. And my screen froze. I'm going to keep talking, but he doesn't wear a suit because like his country's at war and it seems opulent and ridiculous to wear a suit. That's why he doesn't wear a suit. And that's a pretty good reason not to wear a suit. So
you've frozen in a really funny way.
I have. I'm going to go and come back. You talk.
Well, while you do that, I'm going to play a clip of Zelinsky talking about a letter that he wrote back to Melania Trump, not to Donald Trump.
Thank you. And using this opportunity, many thanks to your wife, who's lived in the United States. She sent a letter to Putin about our children, adopted children, and my wife, she, First Lady of Ukraine, she gave the letter. It's not to you, to your wife.
Oh, I want it.
Yeah. So we're saying this sensitive topic, Yes, please.
Well, I don't know if you caught that, Jason, but Melania had written a letter that Trump handed to Putin, and Zelensky wrote a thank you to Melania. I think you and I discussed back when it was reported that Melania was giving Trump a hard time about the Ukraine war generally.
And I think a lot of it from what I've read, a lot of it has to do with the Ukrainian children that have not been returned by Russia, that have been taken. I mean, let's just call it what it is. That have been kidnapped and taken from their parents by Russia and not returned to them. I mean, like, she's a human being. I mean, despite sometimes not it being clear, she's a human being who hails from, Europe. And I think Eastern Europe, right?
As we're talking, I realize how little I know. I couldn't even tell you what country she's from.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Like, I know so little about Melania Trump, but obviously in a world of not great options, she's one of the more responsible people around Trump on this particular issue. It seems. She's from Slovenia. Jeremy says, this is where we are. It's like we're depending on Melania Trump to talk some sense into the president of the United States because his national security advisors around him are too afraid of him.
Yeah.
We'll obviously continue to monitor Ukraine. My assessment for the audience is not much has changed over the past week, even though there's been a lot of reporting about activity, but none of that activity has yielded anything surprising yet. We're going to take a break, but before we go, just a quick plug for Where the Schools Went, which is this podcast I went down for a big chunk of the year to report on the 20 years since Hurricane Katrina. I see Jeremy there. We don't need to run an ad for this, but he's exporting her ahead. So we'll take a minute. We'll just talk about this then. Well, I'll just like give a plug for this pod I've been working on, which is I went down to New Orleans, the anniversary, if you want to call it that. I know it's a weird way to describe something, but 20 years since Hurricane Katrina is next week, and they had this remarkable transformation of their school system that is controversial. And I think it's whether people support or oppose it. And I spoke to over 60 people at this point who are on both sides of this issue. It's really important for American history to be able to say what happened down there and how can other cities learn from what happened down there. And so over the course of 5 episodes, we tell that story. And we partnered with Midas Touch on this project too. And we've shot to the top of the education charts on Apple, and we've gotten a ton of traction. And so for people who want to learn that story, it's Where the Schools Went, wherever you get your podcasts. And I highly recommend it for people who even have a passing interest in our schools.
Yeah, you got a trailer for it. Let's play the trailer and we'll do other ads later.
Cool.
20 years ago, our nation watched a city drown.
New Orleans is getting hit very hard. A lot of objects flying through the air here, including things like siding.
Incredible amount of water coming in with this. Winds been gusting 120 miles an hour in some cases. Just a howling, screeching wind almost makes your ears pop a little bit.
Hurricane Katrina was the deadliest storm in American history.
To wake up that next morning and hear that your city's just gone, it was a shock.
I lost everything. Everybody in my family lost everything.
There was military helicopters overhead. All the street lights were still out. It was eerie. It just was kind of this like odd post-apocalyptic kind of feel.
So I turn on my little 13-inch black and white TV. I heard Bob Brick say something to the effect that like, if people don't leave, there won't be enough body bags.
The storm drowned homes, neighborhoods, entire communities. It swept away the city's schools. Gone too were the rituals and traditions that connected generations. How do you rebuild a city without its schools? Where the Schools Went is a new podcast from The Branch in partnership with the 74 and Midas Touch. It's the story of what happens when an entire school system disappears and a city is forced to start over.
We were constantly updating addresses because our kids were constantly moving from a shelter to a hotel to maybe a church and then maybe to an apartment.
The littlest kids would hide under the desk. The older kids, they were too cool to do things like hide under the desk, but they were flinched.
We could not occupy the first floor because of the standing water.
You're being shot out of a cannon every morning when you wake up.
What followed was the most dramatic school makeover our country has ever seen. Some call it a tragedy.
If your goal was to break up the black community, break up the black power structure, take wealth from an already poor community, then yes, it was a beautiful success.
Others, a miracle.
This community has actually used the crisis as an opportunity to start rebuilding and try to experiment with new ways of learning.
Over the course of this series, we'll trace the story from chaos to reinvention. We'll meet the educators, families, students, and critics who lived it. And we'll ask, what do we owe each other when everything falls apart? Where the Schools Went, available wherever you get your podcasts. Episode 1 drops August 12th.
That looks great, man.
Oh, thanks, dude. Well, I guess we should keep rolling then. There's been this big Dominion lawsuit with Fox News that has unearthed things that I think are not totally surprising to us, but I think are important to just allow history to recognize, which is that it seems, Jason, that the Fox News anchors have had a vested interest going back at least to 2020, but I can imagine a lot earlier in Trump winning the past few election cycles.
Yeah, I mean, shocking that they're fully invested. I mean, so I'm reading through this. In one text message, Mr. Waters, who now hosts Jesse Waters Primetime on Fox News, said to his colleague Greg Gutfeld, "Think about how incredible our ratings would be if Fox went all in on Stop the Steal," a reference to the movement trying to overturn the results of the election. Ms. Pirro, a former Fox News host who is now the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C. under Trump, told Ronna McDaniel, then the Republican National Committee chair, in a text in the months before the election, "I worked so hard for the president and party." Ms. Pirro had been pushing for a pardon for Mr. Trump for her ex-husband. So, you know, there's nothing here that's like surprising. I guess this goes more in the category of confirmed sad, you know?
Yeah. Well, okay. It looks like we're finally loaded up to talk about to do our ad. So we're gonna take an ad break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about Epstein. We're gonna talk about Rogan. We're gonna talk about a strange Trump riff about whether an afterlife exists, and and what his verdict will be, the ultimate verdict. And then we'll talk about some troubling numbers for Democrats and welcome on a guest all when we come back.
Typical children's vitamins are basically candy in disguise.
I love starting my mornings with
sugar,
mud water. It's delicious and clears my brain fog up incredibly quickly. I've been drinking a lot of coffee in my life, and mud water allows me to mix this up. It's an OG blend that mixes cacao, chai, turmeric, and adaptogen mushrooms to help you feel focused without the crash. It is a good replacement for coffee. And the best part, it's amazing over ice, like, and, you know, when it's still a little bit hot out there, depending on where you are in this country. Seriously, you can just mix it with cold water or milk, shake it up, pour it over ice, and boom, you got yourself a refreshing feel-good boost that actually helps.
Okay, so today's going great. Sometimes this happens. Let's just keep rolling. All right. So we're gonna have Zach Wallace, who's a U.S. Senate candidate, in a few in Iowa, on in a few minutes. But before that, let's go ahead and get into these topics. We'll get to the ads when we can. So Ravi, cue up this Epstein thing for us.
Well, yeah. So I think, like, I promise that we will just never not do an Epstein story as we keep going. The one sort of piece I would add this week, you know, you and I talked about earlier, this, you know, co-deputy attorney general from Missouri, and we don't really need to talk about it too much other than to say it's possible they're layering Bongino, who seems like, despite a lot of erratic behavior, to be one of the primary concerns from the Trump camp as it relates to Epstein. Yeah. They've now added somebody to kind of co-deputy with him. But also there was reporting that they were trying to get Rogan in line on Epstein. And at least from this clip, it doesn't seem like they've succeeded.
They're trying very hard to get away with this one. I don't know if the people are going to forget.
People are never going to forget. The problem is, do we have any power? What do we do? You know, what do you do? You definitely can change the way you vote, like if it comes up again. But the problem is, this is a bipartisan issue.
It's bipartisan. I don't know. I heard as a Democratic hoax. That's
yeah, I don't think that's true.
But
well, it's certainly not a hoax if you go to jail. Certainly not a hoax if Ghislaine Maxwell's in jail too. So, like, she's in jail for sex trafficking. Excuse me, she's in jail for sex trafficking. But the question is, to who? Who's she in who, you have to be sex trafficking to somebody in order to go to jail, right?
Yeah.
So who? How's that work? She's been in jail for years. So, like, how's that work?
Is she looking at a pardon? Are they gonna?
I don't know, but they just moved her to another prison.
They moved.
It's supposed to be a nice prison, as far as prisons go.
They moved her to kill her.
Could be. But why would you waste the money to move someone if you wanted to kill them? I'm sure they could kill her pretty easy.
I don't.
It's always great to listen to the great minds discuss things. Look, I don't think they're going to get Joe Rogan in line because Joe Rogan doesn't owe them anything.
I had fun with this. We had a family gathering in Staten Island on Monday. My sister was in town, and it was most of the sort of Democratic leaning members of my family, and we were kind of like commiserating for a while. And then my dad arrived, who, for new listeners, is very MAGA. And one of my aunts was like just throwing out all kinds of conspiracy theories, like that, you know, Trump had stolen the files related to Epstein, and that's some of the files that he was caught with at Mar-a-Lago and all that. And I had such a wonderful time once my dad got there, just like being like, look, I haven't heard anything you're saying that tells me she's not right. And I just was putting him on the hot seat.
Be the way he usually,
yeah. It was, I was having fun with that. But I think the obvious thing here is what they're saying, like the whole prison thing we have to keep talking about, because they literally moved her without explanation and without precedent into what they call Club Fed, a minimum security prison for people like Elizabeth Holmes, where they do like arts and crafts and stuff. And look, I'm all for humane prisons, but this was inexplicable. And I don't think it was to kill her; it was to reward her.
Yes, for something.
Yes,
or to incentivize her to, it could be like, hey, maybe she'll want to stay there, right? Not get moved back. There's something they want from her. Like, that is clear. There's something they are either getting from her or want from her. And that's not a conspiracy. That's like common sense.
Right.
You know, but their problem is like Rogan doesn't know him anything. In fact, you know, saying this conspiracy is not a conspiracy is not going to help him like keep people tuned in. That's not how that works.
Well, here's one. You're talking about strange clips. This is amongst the strangest I've heard in a while. This is Trump talking about the afterlife.
Oh, boy.
Just want to end it. I want to end it. You know, we're not losing American lives. We're not losing American soldiers. We're losing Russian and Ukrainian, mostly soldiers. Some people, as missiles hit wrong spots or get lobbed into cities like Kiev and towns. But, you know, if I can save 7,000 people a week from being killed, I think that's I want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. But if I can get to heaven, this will be one of the reasons. Well, I think I saved a lot of lives with India, Pakistan. They were going at it. The planes were being shot down. That was going to be maybe a nuclear war if I let that go. And I did that through trade.
Trump woke up one day a few weeks ago maybe and was like, I just want to be known as the guy who stops wars. So he's just made up wars and then says he stopped them. Like, that's just a new thing that he does.
Maybe, you know, Trump doesn't strike me as a believer, but maybe that's our only hope, is that one day he just discovers his faith. But, you know, not that faith has helped members of his coalition do the right thing. But
I think Trump's a believer. I just think he thinks he is God.
Yeah, no,
that's the problem. You know.
Okay,
right, well, I think, do we have Zach here now? I think. Let's see. Yeah, we've got Zach here. So before we're going to bring Zach in, and one of the things we'll talk about is we'll talk about like where the party is right now, what changes it's made, and Zach's a good person to talk about that with. But first, I want to introduce Zach, and we'll also talk about his campaign. To bring in Zach, I'm actually just going to start with a short clip from this video that some people are going to remember well, which is they actually may not realize it, but they were first introduced to Zach Walls in 2011 when he gave a speech. It was like one of the early viral moments before viral was really a thing. He gave a speech in Iowa at the state capitol when the topic of gay marriage, of same-sex marriage, was being debated. And a lot of people will probably remember him, and now he's a candidate for the United States Senate. So let's play the beginning of that speech real quick and jog people's memory about Zach.
Maybe not. It just glitches today.
Not today. Today doesn't happen.
Nothing's working today.
Yeah. All right, that's okay. You know, you can Google it later. All right, so we're gonna bring Zach in. You know, Zach Walls is a 6th-generation Iowan, an Eagle Scout. He's a new dad. He's a state senator. Several years after that speech, that people would remember if we were to play it, Zach actually he was in graduate school, I think, and he became a policy fellow at Let America Vote, the organization I founded. That's how I got to know Zach, and I've enjoyed having the chance to stay close friends with Zach in the time since. And now he's a state senator in Iowa, and he's running for U.S. senator. So let's bring him in. Let's welcome Zach Walls. There you are. How you doing, Zach? You were here on a day when it is lots of technical difficulties, so I'm excited that I can see you, and it seems you can hear me. That seems like a victory.
Yeah, we're in the Des Moines Public Library. We're in like a little study room, so if there's a bit of an echo, I apologize. There's a lot of concrete in here.
No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. So okay, you're running for the U.S. Senate against Joni Ernst. Some people who are listening to this and who listen every week are like, wait, didn't they have on another guy? We did. We were going to have them both on. J.D. Scholten, who we already had on a few weeks ago. Both are friends of mine. They were running in a primary against each other. J.D. Actually decided to withdraw from the race in the last couple of days. Nothing bad happening.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he decided not to run. So with that, Zach, tell us about the race.
Well, hey, first of all, it's great to be on the show, guys. Jason, great to see you again. Ravi, been a fan from afar for a long time, so excited to be here.
Thank you.
I'm sure many of your listeners and viewers remember that earlier this summer, Senator Ernst said, we're all going to die, got national headlines and really put this race on the map. We launched the campaign about 10 days after those comments. The response has been really tremendous in Iowa. We've had grassroots supporters in all of Iowa's 99 counties. We've already seen some of the major election forecasters have upgraded the race. It started this cycle in a safe Republican. Now they're moving it in the Democratic direction. So we think there's a really special opportunity here, especially given how challenging the Senate map is for Democrats this cycle to put Iowa back on the map. And Senator Ernst is uniquely vulnerable. She actually underperformed the Republican governor candidate when she first ran in 2014. She underperformed Trump in 2020, and she has never had to face the electorate in an election cycle where Democrats have some advantage. And so we think that there's a really special opportunity to flip this seat and help build a Democratic majority in the U.S. Senate. So as you kind of mentioned in the introduction, and some of your viewers might remember that speech, if you just Google Zach Walls speaks about family, there should be a bunch of different YouTube clips out there.
You know what? Actually, since you mentioned it, Jeremy actually found it, and you just threw to it perfectly.
Okay, there you go.
You're doing it. Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and play that for us? He says, "Oh, I don't have it. Nope, I don't." Never mind. Keep going, Zach.
It's all good. I mean, I could probably give the speech off the top of my head, but I don't want to do that here. So I kind of got my start in politics, doing that advocacy work, fighting for my family, for families like mine. Then I ran for the state Senate in 2018 after being a policy fellow for Let America Vote. And have served now in the Iowa State Senate for 7 years, where I've had the opportunity to see firsthand, how kind of the political process works, to see firsthand, frankly, how dysfunctional the Democratic Party is from the inside in many instances. Have tried to push really hard to make things better. And I think that I've got a track record of trying to push our own party when I think that we need to do a better job. And I think a lot of folks are looking for that right now in their next candidate for the U.S. Senate. And right now, as we've been traveling all over Iowa, there are two things that we keep hearing about from folks, whether we're talking to Democratic audience or more bipartisan rooms that have independents and even Republicans coming out to our events. It's the fact that the economy is still facing extraordinarily high costs, and wages and paychecks have not kept up with the cost of inflation. And the second thing is just this enormous frustration with the status quo, the establishment of both parties, and the political corruption that we see in our system. And that's something that I've seen firsthand at the State House. My very first year when I was a freshman lawmaker, we saw these out-of-state corporations, investment funds come into Iowa. They bought mobile homes, trailer park communities across our state, and they jacked up their rent, lot rent, 50, 60, 70%, including in my district. And I thought this was wrong. So I took action. I brought 15 Democrats and 15 Republicans together. We wrote a comprehensive piece of legislation that would have really addressed this issue. But while we were trying to solve the problem and actually lower these costs for our constituents, the special interests and the lobbyists got to work too. They wrote checks, they made campaign contributions, and our bill, which was co-sponsored by nearly 2/3 of the state Senate, got stuck in a drawer, and it never saw the light of day. So I've seen this corruption firsthand, and I know the devastating actual real life impact that it has on my constituents, my good friend now, Andy Evans, who lives in Gulfview Mobile Home Park in my district. And this corruption is forcing people like her to make these impossible choices between making their lot rent so they can keep their trailer in their home, or affording groceries or co-pays or their prescription drugs, or I'd say nothing of childcare, which is extraordinarily expensive in our state. So there's real tangible real life impacts that affect people, and we need leaders who have the courage to call out that corruption and actually do something about it.
So it's interesting the way you talk about that, because one of the things that Ravi and I have talked about a lot lately is that when we look ahead to the next presidential election, our assumption is that the nominee if they're going to be successful as a Democrat, and even in the primary, that they're not going to just run against the Republicans, that they're probably also going to be in a position where it will only resonate if they also run against the Democratic Party, just run against the establishment generally. And the anecdote you just shared, for instance, is sort of in that vein. And so I'm curious, we have all these stats we were going to go through today, but we really don't need to use stats to explain to people that the Democratic Party's brand nationally is in and people understand that it's in one of the lowest places it's been. So I'm curious, I guess what I'm saying is, delineate for us the difference between, say, a very centrist, which I'm not saying you are, but a very centrist candidate in a state like Iowa running against certain policies of their party, which is what people are accustomed to, versus somebody just being a populist and running against establishment Democrats and Republicans, and why whether it resonates and how it resonates.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I don't think you need statistics. All you need to do is go to a bar or a bowling alley, just listen, talk to people, ask them what's on their mind. Then, and you'll hear the frustration that people have with the Democratic Party and frankly with everything that's going on in Washington right now. I mean, I will say the agenda that is coming out of Washington, D.C. is uniquely bad for Iowa. You look at ending the investments in clean energy. Iowa is a big clean energy state. The impacts of cutting Medicaid, the impact that's going to have on rural hospitals, the mass deportations, the tariffs. I mean, all of that is like just deeply, deeply bad for our state. And in Joni Ernst, what you see is somebody who's just been a complete rubber stamp for that agenda. I think Iowans expect their senator, Democrat or Republican, to put Iowa's interests first and to stand up to anybody, whether that's Chuck Schumer or Donald Trump or Joni Ernst or whoever who is doing or offering things that are wrong for our state, and then to work with anybody who is willing to do things that are good for our state. That is exactly what I have done as the state lawmaker. I've been able to work across the aisle to do things like reform pharmacy benefit managers so we can actually protect rural pharmacies and try to make sure that people can get access to prescription drugs to drive an hour or 2 hours to a pharmacy nearby. But I've also been a champion for our shared values, right? I've stood strong against attacks on workers' rights and organized labor because I believe we should be rewarding work, not wealth. I've stood against attacks on reproductive freedom in our state because I think that we should trust Iowa women to make their own healthcare decisions. And I've been a strong supporter of public schools. But in order to get the coalition, to build the coalition that we're going to need in order to defeat Senator Ernst, you have to focus the most on the issues that Iowans tell you they care about. That's the broken economy and that's the political corruption. And it also requires the political courage to support policies and take positions that not every Democrat in the establishment is comfortable with. One of the things that we hear about the most from people is excitement, the fact that we're supporting common sense term limits. I'll tell you, in Iowa, farmers that rotating the crop soil, and you better believe it's good for our politics too. We spoke about the need to overturn Citizens United and get the influence of corporate money out of our politics. That is a 90-10 issue that Democrats, independents, and Republicans support. And the other thing that has been just driving me up the wall these last several years, we've seen more and more of these reports about members of Congress trading stocks on inside information, getting rich while they're passing laws that hurt people. It's absolutely shameful. It has to stop. And again, that's another perfect example of the corruption that is built into the current status quo. And people are just sick of it. And they're willing to reach across the aisle to support a Democrat if that candidate has the courage to speak out against that corruption. We're seeing it all over the state right now. We were the first campaign to receive support, not just from Democrats, but from independents and Republicans. And that's exactly what it's going to take to defeat Joni Ernst.
All right, Jeremy tells me that he actually has this clip now, so we're going to play it, and then I'm going to ask you one question, and then we're going to get out of here before anything else goes wrong today. So go ahead, let's play this.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Zach Walls. I'm a sixth-generation Iowan and an engineering student at the University of Iowa, and I was raised by two women. My biological mom, Terry, told her grandparents that she was pregnant, that the artificial insemination had worked, and they wouldn't even acknowledge it. It actually wasn't until I was born and they succumbed to my infantile cuteness that they broke down and told her that they were thrilled to have another grandson. Unfortunately, neither.
Now, that was 14 years ago, and a lot of people will hear that and remember it. And, I remember before I knew you seeing that and like, I remember being struck by it. The young man in that video is doing something brave and is also, you can tell, imbued with, I would say, optimism or idealism about what could happen as a result of standing up and speaking out. And now, 14 years later, he's running for the U.S. Senate, which means you have held on to at least some degree of that idealism. And I bet a good way to end the show today is probably a lot of people would like to know why. And like, I want to say, like, not a political answer why, like, when you look inside yourself, think about like, why are you still able to do this? Like, why are you still like, this is still worth my time? Like, you're married, you and Chloe have a young kid. Like, you have other things you could be doing, and you're still young enough that you could be wildly successful in some other field. So like, what allows you to still feel that idealism?
Well, I think there's two pieces. I mean, one, my first real entry into politics in any real capacity was the 2008 Obama campaign. Hope and change is what people remember from that campaign. But the three other things that campaign talked about with volunteers all the time was respect, empower, include. And that is an ethos that I brought to the work that I did after that video went viral, when we were going across the state and across the country, advocating and fighting for marriage equality. Because fundamentally, I believe that people are decent, good people who, even though there is this enormous amount of polarization and frustration in our country, I think that people fundamentally do care about a lot of the same things. They want their families to be happy, to be healthy, to be safe, and they want to make sure that their kids and their grandkids have a better set of opportunities than they had growing up. And I think that there are things that have happened in our country, whether it was the Citizens United decision, like I talked about, or some people who have held on to power for too long and lost that sense of dedication and service that is so important. And to me, that last piece of that service, I mean, I grew up in the Boy Scouts. You talked about that a little bit, Eagle Scout. And when my wife and I were thinking about launching this campaign, it was that call to service that we felt like we were answering. And we really tried to build that into the campaign itself. We had a lot more about that service piece on our website. If you go to zachwalls.com, there's like this build the barn section, and it's got a couple pieces on that people can check out. But from my perspective, I just think that it is those twin commitments to the possibility of a better politics and this call to service. And look, I think people are good, and it's an honor, even if it's not always a pleasure, to have the chance to represent the people of my district and to advocate on their behalf. And if Iowans decide to send me to the U.S. Senate, they can trust that every single day I wake up, I will go to fight for them, not just the special interests in D.C., because they deserve somebody who's going to put them first.
Thanks, man. Okay, it's zachwalls.com, which is WAHLS, zachwalls.com. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you. We failed to do it earlier because of technical difficulty, so now we've got to sell some stuff. So thanks for hanging out. We're going to go to an ad real quick.
Thanks, guys.
I love starting my mornings with mud water. It's delicious and clears my brain fog up incredibly quickly. I've been drinking a lot of coffee in my life, and mud water allows me to mix this up. It's an OG blend that mixes cacao, chai, turmeric, and adaptogen mushrooms to help you feel focused without the crash. It is a good replacement for coffee. And the best part, it's amazing over ice, like when it's still a little bit hot out there, depending on where you are in this country. Seriously, you could just mix it with cold water or milk, shake it up, pour it over ice, and boom, you've got yourself a refreshing feel-good boost that actually helps you stay balanced. Every single ingredient in Mud Water's products are 100% USDA certified, organic, non-GMO, gluten-free, vegan, and kosher, if that's your thing. I know that there's a big debate over the GMO stuff. There's also zero sugar and no sweeteners added. To use Mud Water, you simply drop the powder into your favorite mug, pour some water on it, and give it a mix. Some go wild and they add cream or honey or even CBD. The best part of Mud Water is that it provides sustained energy without the spikes and crash of traditional coffee. Before this, I drank a lot of cups of coffee in the morning, and then you usually have that like mid-afternoon slump. You don't get that with Mud Water. There's also caffeine-free blends available. So Mud Water is available at Target and Sprouts locations across the U.S. And it's never been easier to grab a cup of this friendly pick-me-up. So if you're ready to make the switch to cleaner energy, head to Mud Water. That's MUDWTR.com and grab your starter kit today. Right now, our listeners get an exclusive deal up to 43% off your entire order, plus free shipping and free rechargeable frother. I've been using this thing not just with the Mud Water. It's a little thing you put in the drink and mix it up. And you can get that when you use the code majority. That's right. You get up to 43% off with the code majority. That's MUDWTR.com. After your purchase, they'll ask you how you found them. Please support our show and let them know that we sent you. Keep your energy natural and refreshing all year long with Mud Water, because life's too short for anything less than clean, delicious energy.
I love trying new and adventurous meals, and Cook Unity was made for adventurous eaters with countless global cuisines from 160 plus award-winning chefs. Explore an ever-expanding menu of small batch meals, all tailored to your lifestyle, dietary needs, and cravings. I actually used Cook Unity for years now, well before they were a sponsor of this podcast. And you can get ready-to-eat meals delivered directly to your door by going to cookunity.com/majority54 free. That's cookunity.com/majority54 free, or enter the code majority54 free before checkout for free premium meals for life. I recently tried the Indian butter shrimp curry from Cook Unity, and it was incredible. I love Cook Unity. They're made with humanely raised meat and organic ingredients when possible. It's much easier to achieve your health goals when somebody else is preparing your meals for you. You get these ready-to-eat meals made by top chefs. They have an incredible roster of these all-star chefs, which include people from the Food Network, James Beard Award winners, acclaimed restaurateurs. And what I like is, when I cook for myself, and I try to cook healthy, things are kind of bland. But Cook Unity balances bold flavors and nutrition in their handcrafted meals. And they're freshly prepared, delivered to your door, and never frozen, which is what I really love about this. Get what you're craving. Try the freshest, best tasting meal delivery made by your favorite celebrity chefs. Go to cookunity.com/majority54 free, or enter code majority54 free before checkout for free premium meals for life. That's free premium meals for life by using code majority54 free, or going to cookunity.com/majority54 free. Terms and conditions apply. Go to cookunity.com for details.
All right. This has been a heck of a day, Ravi.
We survived.
We survived it. And, sometimes it's your day in the barrel. So, we get to talk about all the stuff, even if the technical issues were there. So, I think we should just get the heck out of here. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. You can find us at Jason Kander everywhere and at Ravi Gupta everywhere. I always say, please leave a 5-star review. Maybe I won't say that today. Just wait till next episode to leave a 5-star review. I get it. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. Remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.